All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to your third and final day of VITA MCSP partner training. Thanks for joining us again. This has been a real marathon. Appreciate all your time and energy. This session this morning is about manufactured housing replacement. So what we're really going to be focusing on here is the modification to the homeownership asset class that allows us to use funds to replace manufactured homes. The agenda for today, we'll do a few introductions, give some background. We'll let Bio talk about his experience in this field a bit. And then we'll just leave room at the end for discussion, hear from you all. So the etiquette for the Zoom calls, please mute yourself, put a comment or your name in chat to ask a question. And we are recording, and these will be posted to the IDA portal. Here's our agreements again. We always like to bring these into the room each session to really think about how we engage with one another and how we interact with each other. So for this morning, I think I'm gonna go with be willing to do things differently and experience discomfort as my agreement of the morning, because I don't know that much about manufactured housing. And this is always a space where I feel like I'm learning, and teaching and learning at the same time is always fun. Here's our lovely Brittany. She's our moderator this morning. You want to say anything, Britt?
Morning, everyone. Good to see you.
Here I am. You've seen my face plenty this week, I think. Bio, can you introduce yourself a little?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Bio. I'm the manufactured home placement and replacement manager. You can ask me about manufactured home replacement, and that would be, the capital stack, which is like the money, also the project timeline, which we'll go over. All this stuff we'll go over, and project management. Fun fact about me: it wasn't until I got out of college that I realized that I should have gone to community college. I'm really a big fan of holy minimalism. It is like a genre. Alvo Part, that's the homie. I was just listening to him right before I jumped on this. And my favorite activities are camping, hiking, biking, and doing the opposite of camping, hiking, and biking.
That's awesome. Thanks for being here with us today, Bio. Rebecca, you want to say hi?
Good morning, everybody.
All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Rebecca to talk for a moment here. Want to tell us a little bit about the context and history of this class?
Yeah, thanks, Lane. So some of you may know that CASA of Oregon, one of our business lines is manufactured home park co-op development. And so what we do is work with residents of existing manufactured home parks. And when those parks go up for sale, we help them secure financing, form a cooperative, and take ownership of the property, which preserves their home for the long term. There was a pretty intense process of folks, sellers across the state and across the country, that were displacing a lot of people through selling these properties. And so CASA helped develop some legislature in Oregon that gave residents basically the first opportunity to purchase those properties, and then we help them do that. And so as we developed experience in doing that, it became quite obvious that a lot of homes were older, dilapidated, and lacked energy efficiency. And then as we helped co-op parks that were dealing with vacancies, when they would have a vacancy in their park, and that means basically like an empty spot, we would help them replace and fill that empty spot with a newer home. And so it kind of sparked an interest in replacing homes for existing homeowners. Some local foundations had an appetite for helping, and so Meyer stepped in, NOAA, which is a lender, USDA, a variety of folks that Bio will talk more about, but it piqued the interest of a lot of people. Next slide. There's barriers with considerations of lenders. One thing that folks may not know is that manufactured housing, when it's not on land, is the equivalent of a car loan. And so it can be very hard for people to finance replacing those. And it's often something that if somebody needed to have a roof replaced or something like that, it can be often hard to get a loan to make repairs. And so a lot of the work that CASA and Bio have done is to collaborate with other entities to adapt existing products that were originally designed for single family housing. And so out of some funds that we received from Meyer and other folks, we were able to hire to make this placement and replacement of manufactured housing a part of the work we do. All right.
I think this is you, Bio. I'll hand it off.
Yeah, I was muted. Yeah, thanks. So I just want to thank Lane and Rebecca for giving the introduction to this project. And I'm just going to go over a little bit more in depth about based on the overview that Rebecca gave. So kind of as a background or adding to the background that Rebecca gave, we were interested in doing this based on our previous, lines of business, and other organizations were also coming into this space at the same time or around the same time. And I'll go into a little bit as to who those entities were, in addition to the ones that Rebecca mentioned. And before I forget, I just want to thank Meyer, if you're out there listening, thank you for the money for my position. I really need it. So let us get started. So essentially, this was like an experiment. This is a new program, not only in the state that we're trying to develop, but really at the pilot stage, but for the entire country. And USDA Rural Development, which is a partner, they are doing this here. They've tried to do it in Minnesota and also somewhere in the Northeast. Vermont. They're trying to do it in Vermont as well. And there hasn't been success in either one of those states, and we're the latest state to try it. So this isn't something that's easy to do, and we're really trailblazing this model that we're trying to build, this program. So as any new thing, it started out with, it's kind of like an experiment. And if you could put in the chat, we'll be using the chat a little bit, but before we get to that, this program was developed using the same method as a science experiment. So we use a scientific method, and any well-funded experiment has a team. Like I said, we weren't the only ones. So NOAA was convening NOAA's network for Oregon affordable housing. They were convening stakeholder meetings with everyone who's interested in manufactured housing. Energy Trust of Oregon has a weatherization program that they are currently trying to adapt to make it able to help their customers use those funds for replacement as well. Umcar Ranch Cooperative that has these vacant sites and these homes that need to be replaced that Rebecca was mentioned earlier is also interested, and they joined the pilot, as did, as I said, USDA Rural Development and United Community Action Network, which is the community action agency that represents Douglas County and a few other counties as well in Southern Oregon. So we all joined forces to try to answer this question of how do we replace manufactured homes? Oh, and lastly, Craft 3 jumped on as well. They're CDFI, so they're just another lender that works with individuals rather than NOAA, which is focus is on organizations. So we all joined forces, like I said, to figure out how to answer that question, which is how. Oh, next slide. Which is how do we get people out of unhealthy, energy efficient homes into new ones? And that's based on the fact that, everyone has a different interest. The resident-owned communities, their interest is getting these old homes off of the property because that impacts their ability to get new residents into those vacant lots. And University of Oregon's, they get their funding from private utilities, and their interest was getting these homes that are very energy inefficient, so they use a lot of energy, get them off of the grid rather than making the grid larger, because they can do either one, and energy efficiency is always takes precedent over expanding the grid for more energy use. And CASA obviously is interested in helping these individual residents replace their homes because they're just, like I said, and Rebecca said, unhealthy and are unsuitable for living in. And everyone's interested in that as well. And UCAN also has a weatherization program that they would like to use to help these homes become more energy efficient, which saves the residents money and also provides a healthier home for their clientele. And what is, if you could put in the chat, the next, what's the question? What's the word? Oh, step. What's the next step in the scientific method? Does anybody know? Close. It's not quite hypothesis. It's one step right before hypothesis. Use this to develop the hypothesis. It's kind of like testing out your scientific knowledge. It is doing research. Next slide, please. Right. So Network for NOAA, CASA, and also NeighborWorks UMQA all participated or conducted surveys to gauge interest of residents. So we provide technical assistance, as Rebecca said, to UMQA Ranch Cooperative down in Douglas County. NeighborWorks UMQA is the nonprofit down there that owns and operates a manufactured home community. So we all just engage with our residents to see if they would be interested in replacing their homes. And surprise, surprise, people were in fact interested. So that was the research that we did. So after the research, what is the next step in the scientific method? I think Luke, you might have said it. Put it in the chat. Oh, or not. It is the hypothesis. You can go ahead to the next slide, Lane. Thanks. So based on kind of like what we've seen and what we know about the demographics in our communities, we in the communities that we serve, we determined that if we provided enough subsidy, there would be residents who would engage with the program and would enter the program. And that's because in some of these communities, in much of the state and much of the country, manufactured housing, especially in rural America, is housing of last resort. So for some, this is the last step before homelessness. And these houses, some of them are not worth, it will cost more to demolish the home than the home is actually even worth, which is why sometimes the homes are just abandoned, because it'll cost $8,000 to demolish a home around, depending on various factors, and a home could be worth $2,000 or $1,000 or almost nothing, or just the cost of recycling the metal materials. So And people just didn't have the money to replace them, which is why they aren't replaced. So we developed this capital stack, which is just layers of funding to meet that need. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit into the weeds, and if I'm going too far, just something like, hey, too much. So essentially we have a lot of different, like I said, layers of funding. One is the IDA, which comes in at the beginning. That is a, as you all know, individual development account. And its use is very flexible. It can be used for anything. And you can use that at the, that could be the first, that could be the first source of money that you use for any type of purchase. Then you have the loans, which are the Crafty loan, like I said, is a CDFI, and that can be used for anything in the entire project as well. Then we have the Section 502 loan, which is the USDA Rural Development Loan. It is designed, as Rebecca said, for single family homes, and it can only come into play after the project is completed. So while you apply and for the loan, and even if once you get the loan, you can't use it until USDA comes and checks the final end result to make sure that it's up to the standard, and then they'll release the money. So because of that, you'll need, or the applicant or participant will need a bridge loan to pay for those expenses until the Section 502 loan comes through. Again, or after that, we have the OHCS replacement loan, which is gap funding that is not available yet, and we're not really sure, or we're not sure what its availability will be. It comes, like I said, through the state, and we're not exactly sure what the uses of that will be. But we do know that it's going to be, while it's called a loan, it's really a forgivable loan. So it acts like a grant that's forgivable over the course of 10 years. And we have utility subsidy, which is essentially just free money. It's a grant. You can use that for anything. And I have ETO there because they're the main utility partner, but Umatilla Energy Electric Co-op is also participating and will get some funding, as well as a few others. And we have the OHCS decommissioning grant, which is only for, decommissioning is just a fancy word for demolishing or removing the old home. And similar to OHCS, we're not quite sure when we'll be able to, when a resident or applicant will be able to use that money, but it only has one use, and that's taking the home out. And it's whatever it's 80% of whatever the cost of demolition is. And lastly, we have the Community Action Agency weatherization funds that come similar to the Section 502 loan at the very end, and it's essentially like a reimbursement grant. And it won't cover every single expense, but it'll cover some of those expenses. Next slide, please. Could you actually go to, yeah, great. That's right where I want. So then we, like, as I said before, we got all this money together, and we went to Umpqua Ranch Cooperative down in Douglas County to gauge it, not after we gauge interest, to see who would like to participate in the program. And Energy Trust of Oregon was the first to really engage with the community. They put on a presentation and told them about this program as well as their other weatherization programs. And we found that there was, there are around 100 households there, over 100. And we found that the demand was still very low. Out of those 105 households expressed interest. And this was a few years ago. And 2 of those households that did express interest, they are still participating in the program. So, which means, 3 kind of fell away. Next slide. So here we have a map of our territory. So because there wasn't much interest in that, or even even if there was more interest, we still wanted to expand, because the idea of this program isn't just to work in Douglas County, which is the green one towards the bottom. We wanted to expand this to throughout the state. And our main focus is the residential owned communities throughout the state. And this map shows where those communities are. And the colors represent the amount of subsidy in each of those counties has. Next slide, please. So this is a breakdown of the capital stack. So not every community has access to the same resources or even the same amount of resources. So back in the other slide, there were two counties, Douglas County, that was the big green one, and Multnomah County at the top. Those have access to the most subsidy. They have, in that second column, the utility is, it might be like Pacific Power, it's a private utility, depending on, which county. And so they get their funds, those counties get their funds from Energy Trust of Oregon, up to $15,000. Both community action agencies are partners. They get the OHCS loan, which is a forgivable loan, and the decommissioning grant, which we just are saying is $10,000, which totals $80,000. And the CAP agencies in Benton, Clackamas, Clatsop, and Deschutes County, they have not yet officially partnered with us, so we don't have access to those funds, or the residents don't have access to those funds, but they do have access to Energy Trust of Oregon's funds. And the counties in the red, they get their energy from other sources, like public utility, people's utility districts or cooperatives that aren't a part of the pilot yet, and the community action agencies are also not a part of the pilot, so they only have access to OHCS, Oregon Community and Housing Services money. So we really are focusing on the green primarily, and then we kind of go down to the yellow, and then we focus the least amount of our time on the red counties. And that's because we know, or because of our hypothesis, that if we have enough subsidy, then the people will come, basically. If you build it, the people will come. Next slide, thank you. So we found out, not only in URC down in Douglas, URC, the co-op down in Douglas County, but also in other communities that we have engaged with, that it's not just about monetary resources. Because we're providing a lot of those. In some cases, we will be providing up to $80,000, and we have been providing up to probably $45,000 throughout this process in Douglas County. And the interest is still low. So we know now that we need to do more. We need to study the residents more, do like a more detailed survey to figure out what the priorities are, what the hindrances are. And we also have, another realization, which throughout this process, which was that it's not only those financial resources, but it's also temporal resources. People just don't have the time. And that's because, some people have, jobs, kids, stresses that are associated with poverty that take some of their time and energy away. But also, while there is a lot of money, there are requirements to access that money that also take time. It's not just you can apply it to one application, kind of like a Common App for those who did that in college. It's not like you just apply for one and you get everything. You have to apply for each individual pot of money. And people just don't really most don't have the time or wherewithal to do all of that. And next slide, please. And not only is it the time to access that money, but it's also the time to work through the project. So this is essentially the timeline of how the project will come through once you get access to all those funds. So first you have to reserve the subsidy. from the utility and the community action agency. And then once you reserve the subsidy, you can jump right into, or really at the same time that you're applying for those, you get a homeownership IDA. The minimum amount of time that you can be in an IDA, as many or all of you know, is 6 months. So we just put it at 6 months at least. People can be in it longer, obviously, but this is just the shortest amount of time realistically that we think it would take. And then you have to pre-apply for the loans. And that fourth step is pretty important. You have to pay for half of the home. So these are, when you have a site-built home, a home that's built on land that you own, or basically a home that's built on land that you own, you can kind of like pay at the end, but with a manufactured home, you have to come up with the money at the beginning, because they use those resources that you give them to pay for the materials to actually start building your home. So without that money, they just can't start to build it. So you come up with half of the money at that stage, and which is why the CRAFT 3 loan and those subsidies come into play, because you have to have, that's the money that we're using to pay for half of the home. You also need temporary housing, which is that fifth step, because the home that you are living in will be demolished. And when that's demolished, you have to put the new home in. And sometimes, there's a gap there in a place where you can live. You can't live on that space. So you have to find an alternative place to live. And the CRAFT 3 loan can be used for that temporary housing. And that can take, it can vary, depends on how long the project actually takes, from decommissioning to setting the new home. You have to prepare the site, you have to level it, and kind of like there are pads or like concrete slabs. You have to make sure that those are still able to be used, and if they're not, you have to replace them. Then you pay for the other half of the home when it's completed, and once you pay for that, they transport it to the new site, and the home is hooked up, so the utilities are connected to the home, and it's set up, which means they put the two pieces together and they do all of the finishing touches on the inside, like if there's put the carpet and do some drywall as well. And after that is when you receive the weatherization subsidy. And also, if you are using the USDA loan, is when you can start to get the USDA loan. So as we see from this timeline, that it can take a year and 3 months. So it's really at least a year. It could be a year, 3 months. It could be even longer than that. Next slide, please. So the last step is, looking at our hypothesis to see if it was correct. And next slide. We know that it was not correct because we've never replaced a house, and we've been working on it probably about two or 3 years, and we still haven't had anyone go through, anyone even obtain a loan to start the process of getting the house. Next slide. So I would like to ask all of you, what are, in addition to the challenges of money, which we've addressed, what are other issues that you see in our science project? If you have any, just put them right in the chat. Or if you don't, that's okay too, because there are plenty. So next slide.
We've got Luke that said that relocation seems challenging, and Lane says it's a long process.
Oh, thanks. I didn't even see those. Oh, fantastic. Luke, you are absolutely correct. That relocation piece is one that we haven't figured out. And it's because it can be, depending on the size of the household, you might need to pay, and also where the household is located, it can be, anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000, or if not more. And that is a significant expense for these households that has to be included in the capital stack. And also, it is a very long process, Lane. You're completely correct. It's it's not only long, but it's complex, and it takes a lot of input on behalf of the applicant. And it's not just picking out, what color carpet you want and what kind of cabinets you want. It's all of the details that even before you get to that point. And yes, Rebecca, you're absolutely correct as well. Is you have personal experience working with, some of these residents. Everyone's ready to go. It might be because of credit requirements that they don't meet yet. It might be because of any type of financial instability or employment instability can be a significant issue as well. Does anyone know where this is? This picture. The hint is Northeast Oregon.
Is it the Wallowas?
It is. Nice job, Brittany. It is the Wallowas. I took a trip out to the Wallowas earlier this year, and I really had no understanding of what I was really getting myself into. And I spent 3 days out there with a friend, and I had to use, her coat because I didn't bring one. I was like, oh, it's the summer. I'm from Chicago, so the summer is always hot. It's never cold in the summer, and it's flat, so there are no places to be cold in the summer. And that is not the case when you're 5,000 feet up in the air. And I had no understanding of the environment. And I definitely didn't have any understanding of the ecosystem either because, I just did not have enough bug spray and those things were going to fly me away. So it was really the same thing with this project that we're working on. We really didn't know and still don't know all that we need to about how to usher a resident through the entire process. So the people who are in it now are essentially the guinea pigs that we're learning from to figure out how do we get someone through this, and what are those barriers that they have to experience. We have an idea of some of them, but the more we engage with the residents, the more we learn. Next slide, please. And so many, if not all of you, have played Monopoly. And, in the game, if you have a $100 bill, that can get you a lot. But that money cannot be used everywhere. And that's similar with our capital stack. So not all that capital is created equal. Some, as we saw from that slide, some of those funds can be used for certain uses. Some of those funds have certain uses only. Some can be used in a wide variety of ways. And some of those funds come in at different times. So we have to make sure that the resident or the applicant can have the money that they need when they need it. And that's a challenge that we haven't completely figured out yet because we haven't had anyone go through the project. Next slide. Now, most of you may not know who this random dude is. Yes, Nanette, you are completely correct. And that is a piece that we're trying to figure out is to who is so Nanette said that we need someone to usher them through that process. And I am doing that role for those who live in resident-owned communities. But again, as I said before, being completely honest, I don't know all the intricacies of how to make this work because no one has done it before. So we are, trying to figure that out with our partners, some of whom, one of whom is Dev Northwest, which is a homeownership center, to figure out like, how do we get someone, from point A to point B to point C all the way to Z? And what are those significant, we have an idea of what those significant milestones are, but once some of those we haven't even hit yet. So this person is, I don't even know his real name, but it's the dude that played Charlie in the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And I put him there. He's actually a veterinarian now that lives in like upstate New York, like outside of Buffalo, which I find to be really fascinating. But in that movie, he had to, Willy Wonka was trying to find, someone who had the golden ticket, someone who was like, had the right character, strong enough character to take over his business. And that is a similar challenge that we're trying to find, not about character, but someone who's ready, someone who has already, I guess, enough, someone who has the financial means, the job security and the time to go through this process. And the idea is to get those who are most ready, find those people and get them through first, so that we can learn from them to help those who are less ready, to help them get online as well. And as I said, we've only had, since the beginning, we had 2 down at URC in Douglas County, and now we're up to 5 out of all those colors in the state of Oregon maps. Those, like, I don't know, like 10 counties. We only have 5 people or 5 households who are, are Charlies. So that's been a significant challenge for us. And next slide. Am I really not? No, I'm gonna say that's Rebecca, because she has like a good sense of chocolate, because she gave me some ones. So I think she's probably Willy Wonka. And so our last slide, second to last slide. So shout out to Israel. I know he is a big comic book buff. So if we, again, think about that slide that had all the different colors of the different counties, sounds amazing. All the different counties, we would like all those counties to be green, which means we have the Community Action Agency on board, the utility on board, and and also OHCS on board. And for most of them, it wasn't all 3 of those agencies that were on board. And that means we need a more robust partnerships. We have, like, as you know, like OHCS, Dev Northwest, various CAP agencies that are interested and participating, but we just need more, because we need access to more residents, and we need to figure out how to make it work in more parts of the states, because it's not, our interest is, resident-owned communities, but there are many more manufactured home communities besides those, as they're under 20 in the state, and there are hundreds of manufactured home communities. So those residents need access to this program as well. So last slide. Oh, sorry, that's not supposed to be there. Last slide. Thank you. So it's not just about, liking this on Facebook. I don't even use Facebook or anything like that. Social media is like not my thing, but I'm hoping that this was like a good plug for you all to want to participate and want to like engage and help us in this effort, that some of your clients could participate, could take advantage of. So, my request to all of you is to help us connect to those CAP agencies that are in, Benton County, Lynn County, or, Lane County, and also those homeownership centers that are, in your territories as well, because we need their participation to make this thing work in the long term, from the pilot stage to the program stage. And also, if you have any ideas that you would like to give me, my email's right there, and we can kind of open this up to a discussion as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bio. That is just awesome information, and hearing your whole journey with that is really just, at least for me, very illustrative. So thank you so much for sharing.
No, thanks for having me.
We just have a couple more minutes here. I put up a couple of questions about like, why did you choose to attend this session? What do you hope to use this goal for? So I just like to kind of give us the last 8 minutes here to either address these questions or to ask Bio questions or to offer your services up or whatever you want to do. So I see that Nanette says that the Housing Authority of Yamhill County has a rehab loan program that may work well with this somehow. So that's awesome. I think Bio and Nanette, you should definitely connect. You could have a lot to learn from one another. What else? What kind of questions do folks have? You want to use the Jamboard?
Oh, Nanette says jam on it. I like the Jamboard. It's cool.
Very fun. I feel like our specialists are shy. So if you do want to put up a sticky note, want to answer a question, ask a question, I dropped the Jamboard in the chat. So definitely feel free to contribute in that way. I'll put the questions back up here.
I think one question that I have, I'm curious if folks have had clients or community members inquire about replacing their manufactured home. It's hard for us to know whether it's something that people are interested in, and we haven't seen any applications for this purpose come through. So I'm curious if people know if there's an appetite in their local communities for it.
Go look at the Jamboard. Nothing. All right. Well, if there are not any, okay, Debbie says, I think there's a huge need, but it's very complex, and our demographics don't do complex very well. Something I was thinking about a lot during this is kind of the bandwidth idea, right? And that in a time when there's so much stress and grieving and loss already, that it's hard to kind of take on a new project. That's something that I've been thinking about a lot, just in terms of all of our savers in this program and, you know, myself and everything. And I think that a lot of low-income people are extremely resourceful and extremely creative. So I think that the complexity can be a challenge. And I also think that we work with populations that can overcome challenges.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for Bio. I guess, have there been any circumstances where in a co-op, an old home has been abandoned, and then the sort of the co-op or CASA like invests in the process of putting a new home and then selling it? So it's more like a home, it's more like a manufactured home purchase rather than a replacement. Does that happen, or what does happen at the co-op level when unit gets abandoned?
Great question. How much time do we have?
We have 4 minutes.
Okay, sweet. So, right, 2 questions, 2 answers. There is a home actually right now that in Umpqua Ranch that is in the process of being abandoned. So the household left the home and live somewhere else, and they're working with the property manager to kind of like officially give the home up. And so when that happens, so these resident-owned communities, they're corporations that we just provide essentially like business advice to. We're like their advisors. So they then become responsible for that home, and depending on the condition, they could sell it or they could have it demolished. And this home is not a habitable home, so it will be demolished. And that second idea of, like once that home is gone, or even if there just was never a home there because in the space, the lot is empty, could there be, an entity, whether it's CASA or, it would really be the co-op, could they put that home there? And that is an idea that that we have, kind of like discussed and dialogued about, and some other organizations in other states have actually done that. And speaking of like the complexity of the issue of like ushering a person through the process of like taking the home out, putting the home in, picking all like the bells and whistles that you want on the home, all of that is out of the way if you can place that home there. And some co-ops are interested in doing that. They just need access to capital, and that could be, if it could be somewhere between probably like $70,000 to like $130,000, which is not a little bit of money. But if we're talking about this business, it's a lot more palatable. They just need access really sometimes to a loan. So that's a really good idea. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I need to continually keep that on the back of my mind and kind of bring that up again to figure out how we can make that work, because not every community has homes that they need replaced. Some people just need homes. Some communities need homes just to be placed there, and someone buys it like they do a site-built home.
Cool, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
We have less than a minute here. Any final words from any of our hosts?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks everyone for listening to me babble on. I think about stuff all the time, so it's good to get it out of my brain. And like I said, email me if you have any ideas. Thanks, Luke and Nanette for your ideas, and I hope to work with you in the future.
Thank you, Bio. Thank you, everybody, for coming. This was a really great session. I really learned a lot.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you.